Coming up, the simple way to target the right notes to build solos across the neck like this. A question I'm asked a lot is, how do I decide which notes to target when I'm soloing? Or in other words, which notes to play over which chords? Now this is such an important topic, and for those in the know, it's a real differentiator between intermediates and the greats. Slash, for example, is an absolute master at this. Now, I can't tell you what notes to play. That's down to your own creativity, but I can get you started and give you some options that will always sound great. The backing track we're using for this video is so simple. It's just G and C repeated over and over. So we're in the key of G, and of course we can use the G Major Pentatonic to solo over these chords. Now for anyone who's seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that we looked for the major pentatonic by finding where our root note, the G, is the second note in the first position shape. So here we've got our G at the 3rd fret on the low E, so that's going to be the second note of our pentatonic shape. The classic shape there, it's exactly the same notes as E minor, and of course we can play it up here as well. Now I've picked this key because it's really easy to see how the scale notes down here fit around these open chords. But how do we know which notes to play when? Well, on screen is a G major scale. I've gone slightly into a second octave just to help demonstrate that all the basic chords we use in G major are triads made up using notes from the G major scale. For example, a G chord is made up of a G, a B and a D. These are known as chord tones, and these are the notes we want to target as we solo over each chord. Now of course we're using the pentatonic scale, which loses us a couple of notes. You can see we still have our 3 chord tones for the G chord, but for some others like C we now only have 2 notes to target. If we just zone in on the 2 chords in our backing track, G and C, you'll see they both contain a G. Now bearing in mind that we can use any octave, the simplest option would be to target the same G over both of these chords. This might seem very limiting, but I promise we're going to get a full solo from it. So how do we target G over both these chords in a musical way? Now it really helps to think of these target notes right down at this end and how they fit around the open chords, but I'm going to move them up to this position at the 12th fret as it's more melodic. So let's just think with our G here. In our G chord we've got the open G string, and exactly the same with the C chord. We've still got that open G string, so let's just take that note and move it up 12 frets, up an octave, to play it here at the 12th fret. So that's the note we're aiming for, but what do we do in a practical sense to target it in a musical way? Well, of course we could start off by approaching from below, so let's just use this E here at the 14th on the D string and just pivot between those 2 notes. That kind of thing is really common to do, and also then using the D here at the 12th on the D string. That's a really common lick there. That kind of thing, we all recognise that sound. Then of course we can also approach it from above using this A here at the 14th fret on the G string. So this works really well as just a slide back and forth like that to land on the G, or hammer on and off like that. But really we also want to think about bending this note up and then resolving back to that G like that. So a full bend here is going to give us quite an in-tune sound, getting up to this B here at the 16th fret, like that, but a half bend gets us up to the 15th fret note here, a B flat, which is the blue note, so that's a much more bluesier sound, resolving back to that G there. Now, if you want a little bonus tip, something really bluesy to do, is take this blue note here at the 15th fret, give it a full step bend up, and then come to the 14th fret with a half step, and then resolve down to that G there. So I'm just letting that note at the 14th fret come back down before resolving to the G, which is a really great bluesy resolution. So let's play over the track using these ideas to target the G. I'll start off just playing the G over the chords and then start to build up a solo. So we can get quite a lot from just one target note, but of course we want more options than this.
So now over the G chord, let's try targeting a B, the major third, and for the C chord we'll keep on targeting that G. Now keeping the target notes close together like this is great for maintaining a natural sense of melody.
So let's take a look at where we can play the B over our G chord. Now the most obvious place is probably here, 12th fret on the B string, and that seems to make the most sense within our pentatonic position. But I also want to really encourage you to play it here, 16th fret on the G string, and this is going to make a lot of sense when we get to moving around the neck in a moment. And sliding into that note works really well, and so we've got this B here that we'll play over the G chord, and then of course we could slide back to the G, which we're going to play over the C chord. Then we've touched on this already, but of course we can use the A here at the 14th fret to bend up to that B. Now, when we're bending up to it as a target note like this, we want to be pretty precise with our tuning. So it makes sense to play the note first and then bend up to it like that and just check that you're getting that in tune. So we could bend up to it, come down, and then resolve back to the G there, which we're going to be targeting over the C chord. Maybe play something like that. Then to take this a step further, we could also play it as a string on string bend, where we're going to bend up on the 14th of the G to hit the B there, and then the little finger coming on to play the 15th on the B string, which gives us a D. So both these notes, the B and a D, are chord tones of the G chord, so they're always going to work really well here. Now, if this fingering's awkward, then play it with the stronger fingers there maybe. But we can either play both those two notes together like that, or play the bend first, and then come onto the D separately, like so. One thing I like to do with this is repeat it a couple of times, where the first time I'm going to be pretty well dead in tune, but the second time let it come a little bit flat for a more bluesy sound before resolving down to the G. Something like that, a really great bluesy feel. So let's solo again, starting really simple and then building. Now we've only got 2 target notes, but see how this really opens up the possibilities. So now we're going to move away from targeting that root note of G at all, but also build up our options across the neck.
Okay, now let's keep that B over the G chord, but for the C, let's move down to an E. So now for both chords, we're targeting the major third, which is a really strong way to outline the changes.
So let's just talk quickly about how and where we can target this E before we go on to look at moving all this around the neck. So the E we find here at the 14th fret on the D string, so we could target this from below by maybe sliding in from the 12th fret or hammering on. Something that works really well here is playing a double stop hammer on, where we've got 12 and 12 on the D and G strings, and then hammer on just on that D string to hit that E at the 14th fret. That's a really cool way to bring out that E, which is a bit more sophisticated. Then of course maybe we could bend to it from below. Bit tricky in this position, and then coming from licks that approach from above, we can use some of that bluesy stuff we looked at when approaching the G, but now just changing the rhythm a bit so we land on the E instead, something like that maybe. But now we really want to take this a step further and start moving across the neck and into some different octaves and registers. Now you may have noticed that so far we've been focused purely on the D and G strings here, and whether you knew it or not, we've been building up a little pattern where we've got 12 and 14 on the D, that's a D and an E, and then 12 and 14 on the G, that's a G and an A, and then that slide up to the 16th gives us a B, so D, E, G, A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 notes are the complete G major pentatonic, just contained within this tiny little shape here. Now, this little shape allows us to move it into lots of other places on the neck and play exactly the same licks in all different positions. So if we come down to the low E string, we can start here on this D at the 10th fret. This guitar sounds terrible on the low E string for some reason, by the way, but just ignore that. So D, E, G, A, B. See, it's that exact same shape. There we have it. And then you'll see we're perfectly positioned to go into the position we were playing in before, like so. And then again up to the B string, this time just slipping up 1 fret for our D there at the 15th fret. D, E, G, A, B. The exact same pattern again. So there, and there, like so. Now, I've got whole videos on this, which I'll link below if this is going too quick, but this is what we call the 2+3 pentatonic diagonal scale. So, let's just take a simple lick. In this case, we're trying to move from the target note of B over the G chord to the target note of E over the C chord. So maybe we could play something like this. Like so, in our original position on the D and G strings there. Now let's just take that exact same lick and there it is on the B and high E strings and on the lower strings there. So now we've got these 3 positions. We can take pretty much all the content we've learned so far and start applying it in different places on the neck. So here we go with another solo, targeting B and then E, but also moving down low and then coming up high. So hopefully you can see that by understanding target notes, some common licks to approach them, and how to move around the neck, there's an absolute goldmine of possibilities here. So let's put everything together into one last solo.